Hi, everyone. My name is Anita Crawley. I'm an educational consultant focusing on equity, online learning, and student support, currently working at Hartnell College in Salinas, California. And I am very excited to introduce you to Stephanie Whelan, who is signing in from a college that I used to work at many years ago. And I just have met her today, and I'm anxious to hear more of what they're doing at Harper. Before I hand it over to Stephanie, let me take care of a few housekeeping tasks. As you know, we're being recorded, so make your own choices as to whether or not you want to be visible either through voice or video. The closed captioning button is on the bottom for you to make choices about that as well. The recordings will be shared with you as soon as we make sure all the captioning is done appropriately. That's all cleaned up. And you'll get an email notifying you when the videos and the recordings are ready. So are there any questions? I'll monitor the chat. Okay, Stephanie, it's all yours.
Well, hello. Thanks for having me today, Anita. Something that I just made a connection about, Anita mentioned that she used to teach at Harper College in Palatine, Illinois, northwest suburb of Chicago, which is where I teach now. And I remember when I was at a conference recently, I talked with an old colleague from Harper, Marianne Fonts, who used to work with me in the Department of Academic Success and then the English department, and then with first year seminar. So she's actually working at Hartnell now as a dean. So she had mentioned your name to me, Anita, as somebody to look out for. And it just now occurs to me that you're the same person that Matt introduced me. So anyway, it's great to be here, and I'm looking forward to meeting more colleagues today. So we're just going to talk a little bit about what we've been doing at Harper in our Teaching and Learning Center. So I'm a faculty member who's taught a lot of developmental English, credit English, first year seminar, and learning framework courses. And I've had the pleasure and the honor this is my 6th year, to be chair of our Academy for Teaching Excellence Teaching and Learning Center. So in the last few years, we've really developed some sustainable programming that we think is interesting because it has provided our faculty with ways to engage in course redesign that we're hoping will really reduce equity gaps. So we're in our 2nd cohort, and we have a bunch of different ways that faculty can engage with the program and the tools. So I was asked to come talk to you today about what we're doing, but I'm also really interested in what you're doing. So if at any time you'd like to post in a chat a hello, where you're from and what you're doing, we'll save the chat. And then also, if you want to come on mic at any time and add something or ask a question, you're welcome to do that. And Anita will be watching the chat too. So if she sees something and I'm too busy presenting, she can just, speak up and let me know we have a question or a comment, and we'll just kind of facilitate that together. So anyhow, we were going to talk to you a little bit about how our Academy for Teaching Excellence is set up. I know that everybody has a different situation. Ours is a combination of what used to be the Center for Innovative Instruction and a committee called the ALT Committee, which was the Academy for Learning and Teaching. And then we had our CAFE, which was the Center for Adjunct Faculty Engagement. And we merged it all together into one teaching and learning center that supports instructional technology and full-time and adjunct faculty. So that's working really well. And we're a squad of 11 people. And then we have the Equity Teaching Academy, which is a series of graduate equivalency courses where people get internal PD credits that are supposed to be equivalent to graduate credits. And we have a series where people examine their institutional context and also personal backgrounds and potential biases, and then really reflect on their own teaching, but also institutional concerns and issues and data, and then redesign their courses so that they can try to address equity gaps. So we have some promising data, and then we also have different ways to enter into the work. We have 2 tools that we'll share with you today. The Enacting Equity Guidelines course review tool, which was, created using a lot of existing tools that are already out there. So I would say that Peralta has a rubric that was one of the things that I remember us looking at. And then the Applying Equity Matrix, which is a database for crowdsourcing strategies around themes of inclusive teaching. So first we'll talk about our programs and how we've developed them and what incentives we have available, and then how we support those programs. And again, at any time, if you have a comment or a question, you want to type or you want to ask something, you can speak up as well. So how do these things all connect? So first of all, we have a long tradition of graduate equivalency courses. So Anita had mentioned we have a colleague in common, Pascuala Herrera, who's just presented. She teaches one of those courses that relates to accessibility, creating accessible learning environments for students. She's taught it for years and it keeps filling. So we continue to offer it actually every year, whereas some of our other ones we don't. We also have workshops that we run regularly that have our tools in case people don't want to take a course, or they don't have the time, or they don't need credits. Then we have our online and on-demand tools and resources. A lot of our workshops we're making on-demand, particularly for in the summer, so people can access them from wherever, whenever. And then through our strategic goal plan, we were able to get grants for extended work. So after people take the series of courses in the summer, they can do a really in-depth course redesign. Then in the fall, when they implement, they do a pretty robust assessment plan where they do some in-class assessments, but as well as surveys. And then we're in our collaborative interpretation part of the year right now, because after people implement in the fall, we have a group that is collaboratively interpreting and reflecting on the data. So far, we've had, because we have so many different ways to engage, even though we've only developed these programs in the last 2 to 3 years, we've already had 100+ full-time and adjunct faculty, if we include also our high school partners. So we have our graduate equivalency courses open for the sender high schools in our district to have those people be able to register as well. So that's really great, because then we get to learn from each other, because obviously we have the same students, their students are eventually coming to us. So that's been a lot of fun. And the classes end up being just about half and half. We've had this really robust course review tool. We've had 25 people complete that so far. And then we've had an estimated impact of over 600 students just in the last couple of years from our redesign efforts. So how did we, how are we able to do this? How did we get started? Well, we were lucky enough, we applied for the Research Practitioner Partnership with Achieving the Dream, APLU, Digital Promise, and Every Learner Everywhere, which is a subgroup of Achieving the Dream. And what was wonderful about it is we were supported not only in, learning about redesign, but also, and this was really even more important because we already sort of had a curriculum for our Equity Teaching Academy series, but they helped us create a robust assessment plan and gave us the support to do that. So what we found right away was that about 90% of students in every category across the board felt like they were more satisfied in courses taught by faculty who engaged in this project versus 70% of students satisfied in the sections where faculty had not engaged in this professional development. And that was with our first cohort, which was English. And then we had pass rates for Black, Latinx, and first-generation students in this first English cohort tending to be higher. So that was the first way that we piloted. We had a curriculum we were already developing. We joined up with this Research Practitioner Partnership, and they took us through the process of redesign and creating an assessment plan. So then we had our first cohort that was across disciplines. So this time we had 16 instructors, with 358 students in their classes. And like I said, half of them were from Harper and half of them were from our sender school districts. And one of the things we did was create a really robust survey that Digital Promise had helped us with. And some of the items were things like trust, teacher understanding and respect and culture, teacher using more real world examples to illustrate course content, and ensuring students are aware of support resources. So when students compared their redesigned course with other courses that they were currently or previously taking, these are the numbers of students that felt like these elements were more pronounced in the course where the faculty had participated in professional learning around redesign. So those were just some of the highest ones that we pulled out. But across all of our items, typically we had a 30% greater, self-reporting from students about their experience. So just to give you a little piece of what it looked like, I take a lot of pictures at our events. I don't know if any of you are like that, but I like to share stories back out, from pictures. So what you see on the left is actually one of our colleagues from Northern Illinois University. So rather than just having our own internal design and facilitation team of faculty and faculty developers, we do have other partners from the region helping to facilitate the courses. So you can see we're in a high flex environment there where people generally log into their laptops and participate in a back channel while they are participating in the course. So the other woman sitting next to Joe Flynn from Northern Illinois University is from one of our high schools. And then you see a group in the middle there. If you look carefully, one of our pieces of equipment for live streaming is a swivel. So you see an iPad on a stand there. We also use an owl. We also have hardwired equipment. But what we're finding is about half of the faculty attend in person, or sometimes a little less than half, and at least half or more tend to stream in from home. But that's really helped us to increase participation because people are able to participate from a different school building or from home. And then you see an example here. One of our Harper faculty that's on the design and facilitation team from English, Ana Contreras. Here's just a picture of her. Again, you have the swivel there, but you can see that there's a lot of people streaming in from home with their cameras on and actively participating. So even though HighFlex can be very challenging for anyone using technology, it's worked exceptionally well for our faculty. We're still trying to figure out how to make it as engaging for our students, but faculty seem quite comfortable with being on camera and active facilitation and engagement, sharing and doing presentations and all of that. So that's working out pretty well. So let's talk a little bit about the Equity Teaching Academy. Equity Teaching Academy, again, was designed as a curriculum where we collaborated with Roosevelt University and City Colleges on an earlier grant during the pandemic, where we met, every Friday for a couple semesters to research what programs were out there and design our own for our own institutions. So when we got that reflective practitioner grant that I mentioned earlier with Achieving the Dream and Digital Promise, it allowed us to test that out with the initial English group and to design that assessment plan that I mentioned. So what we have in the Examine for Equity course, which has so far been taught by Dr. Pam Hoff from Illinois State University. We examine the social, historical, and political context through literature and discussion. So she really enjoys the book Cast by Elizabeth Wilkinson. It is a tome of a book, so it's really a lot to get through. So we obviously create meaningful ways for faculty to read parts of it and, either, tell what resonates with them or challenge things that don't. And that's a way to sort of model some active reading strategies that they can use with students who are also hard pressed for time. But more importantly, in Examine, we learn how to look at patterns in our national and local data. So our own institutional data really get familiar with what the patterns show for student success inequities. And then we assess areas in need of growth. So we work on our equity consciousness, and Dr. Hoff, even though she teaches the curriculum that we had built and vetted, also brings in her own, obviously, resources and tools. So she does a tool in, equity consciousness to have faculty become aware. And then in areas where people either feel that they're really sort of expert, or in areas where they feel they need growth based on their, consciousness assessment, they contribute to a growing body of equity literacy terms and related research and definitions and resources that we've been building also as a collaborative with our community college, our four-year partner, and our high school, Sender High School. So we are growing through the course a continued body of terms so that we all have that shared lexicon so we can accelerate our awareness and engagement in the work. So then in our Reflect on Equity course, which initially was taught by Joe Flynn, who you saw in a previous picture from Northern Illinois University. We've also had our high school partner. This is Tony Bradburn from District 214, which is our one of our sender school districts. Joe became director of DEI at Northern, so Tony stepped in this for our second cohort. What we do here is we reflect on the South and our teaching and our educational structures we operate within. We engage in some discussion models that promote critical discourse and growth. Some of you might be familiar with the Courageous Conversations Compass from the Courageous Conversations book. We absolutely love it. It's helped us, not just as teachers, but also as facilitators to really be able to have balance and center ourselves and engage in this. And we use some other sort of norming activities to get everybody ready to really lean in and not focus on consensus, but rather focus on deepening our understanding and awareness. We share snapshots in our identity development as one of the initial assignments to really talk about during our lifespan, how we've grown in our awareness and equity and racial consciousness in particular. And then we use one of the tools, which you'll learn about, the Enacting Equity Guidelines, to reflect and prepare for redesign. So in the second course, we do some deep reflection in several areas of our teaching. For example, one of them is about identity and how we, in the beginning of the course, present identity. And we talk a lot about something that I like to call cultural integrity, which could mean different things in different contexts, but the way I define it would be a real keen awareness of your own perspectives and the background and experiences that you derive those perspectives from, but also understanding the backgrounds and perspectives of others and how that plays out, not just in the classroom, but in society at large, so that you can really be forthcoming about where you are and your growth and your journey, and really understand that we're all doing that no one person's perspective is, the perspective. And so that helps people to really engage in those reflections. And then lastly, the Redesign for Equity course. We have a cohort actually finishing up tonight. And the cohort tonight is going to be doing our last teaching demo and talking about the summer redesign. So in the redesign course, we again look to identify equity gaps in the programs and courses that we teach. So right now, for example, we're looking really carefully at our equity gaps in each of our disciplines and discussing the mentor text that we use. And right now we're using a text called Textured Teaching for this one. I forgot to mention in the second course in the series, we actually use Bettina Love's Abolitionist Teaching book, which I see Anita shaking her head yes, so she's familiar with it. In this one, Anna just added the Textured Teaching book. We do this one as a workshop. So instead of a traditional graduate course where you're doing a lot of readings and discussion and maybe writing and presentations, this one is actually set up as a full-on teaching demo. Anna's been part of the Chippewa River Writing Project in Michigan, and they have a really unique style of demoing teaching, where you do a demo and then the discussion is sort of guided in terms of the type of responses and feedback that you give, and teachers usually tend to really enjoy it as a way to get to see what one another is doing in their classes and also share a little bit of themselves. So we do teaching demonstrations to talk about inclusive teaching practices based on the themes in the Applying Equity Matrix. So you'll have access to look at these tools in just a little bit, but that's the the AEMy is that date repository of people sharing their teaching strategies based on themes that are pronounced in the literature on inclusive teaching. So first, we'll talk about the Enacting Equity Guidelines course review tool. So this was, again, developed collaboratively by seeing what other rubrics and guides are out there. And then we worked with our shared governance groups, our faculty development committee, our DEI shared governance group, and of course, our Academy for Teaching Excellence. And we developed a review tool where, just like we have the tools for reviewing our online courses, like you might use Oscar, which is from SUNY, we do as well. We've adapted. Now, this is one that's not about online teaching, it's really about inclusive teaching. So we use that tool in the Equity Teaching Academy. We use it in coaching, in course reviews, which faculty can attend a workshop, high flex or on demand, and then decide to sign up for coaching if they don't have time or bandwidth to spend time in our graduate equivalency courses. So the Enacting Equity Guidelines has reflective prompts. Within those prompts, there's also hyperlinks to increase awareness of related concepts. So for example, implicit bias. Not everybody who teaches at a community college has had any kind of coursework in education, or what we used to call multicultural education when I was first in college, which we don't really anymore. But for a lot of people, these terms are not familiar. So there's hyperlinks in there, and then there's space for not just reflection, but for people to actually share their artifacts of what they've created for course materials or syllabus language assignments and things. So that's an artifact that's part of the redesign. This was an example from Anna's class. She does flipped video introduction. So in a way to increase identity and presence in the class, she has students create flip videos to introduce themselves. And a lot of what we talk about is things you can do across modalities. Since post-pandemic, we have a lot more online or blended hybrid classes than ever before. So we really try to provide those kind of ideas. And then, so that's the one tool. And again, we'll share where our tools are on our website in case you're interested in them later. So the Applying Equity Matrix actually was born out of the pandemic. So what happened during the pandemic was we first started by going to our Senate and saying, what would be helpful for you all with your online teaching right now? What can we do to help you right now? And the faculty basically said, your Oscar rubric has 50 standards. We're in an emergency. We can't make sure we have 50 standards in our rapid online transition. So we said, okay, we'll select out 15 essential ones. If you can focus on these essential ones, maybe then you'll feel less overwhelmed. So that was the first thing that we did. And then, of course, like everybody else, we were having a million webinars during the pandemic, right? And how cool is this? Look at whose picture is on this webinar. It's Pasquale herself, our common colleague, Anita and I both know. So the essential question here was, okay, now that we have these 15 strategies identified or standards, how can we make sure that we have ideas for each of those strategies? So we did some webinars and had people share. What strategies are you doing that support those 15 essential strategies? And so we started gathering strategies from across disciplines. And we said, we need to create a repository so people can search by theme and also by complexity. So like time intensive ones versus more simple things that you could do. So these are the themes that we decided were most prevalent in the literature and that we could organize people's strategies by. So we basically organized by accessibility, which doesn't just mean digital accessibility. It means all kinds of ways to make information and materials and learning more accessible. And I think of Tom Tobin. If you're familiar with him, he's big in universal design. He always talks about +1. So one of the things I would want to emphasize about accessibility is putting the information in just more than one way, just plus one more way that might work for a student. And then, of course, everyone's talking about increasing belonging. So what strategies are you all using, especially with that online teaching time? People need a lot of help with that. engagement, how are we engaging students? And part of that is making relevant instruction relevant. So we did just combine that into one section, but relevance is clearly very pronounced. Flexibility. So if we're all trying to get people to the same standards, what are some ways we could be flexible, to be more accommodating and supportive? Humanizing, which again, there's a lot of overlap between things like belonging and humanizing. But we were able to identify some strategies that we thought were particularly humanizing in terms of what we do as instructors, but also how we invite students to show up. And then the transparency framework, we love it so much. We did an entire faculty retreat on the transparency and learning and teaching framework. And so since that time, we've spent a lot of time trying to create resources where faculty can just make the purpose of assignments clearer, but also the explicit tasks to successfully complete and pitfalls you might avoid. And then also, what successful completion looks like, so that we can demystify what we're trying to do. And I think we know from the book How Learning Works that students are more motivated when they perceive a high value in what they're doing and they understand how to engage in it. And I think the transparency framework is really closely related to that. Okay, so if you like QR codes and you want to check out AEMy, you can. AEMy is built in SoftChalk, so it is a sortable repository. So you can take your phone and act like you're about to take a picture of this, and it should take you to the website, or we made a smaller web address. All of our resources are on harper-academy.net. And if you go to teaching support and then you go to inclusive teaching, they're there. But going directly to AEMy might be a little more time efficient for you. So there's AEMy. And again, I'll make sure Anita has these slides and that they're sharing them out. So you don't have to do it now if you don't want. And like I said, all of our other tools are there as well. So I'll make sure you have that in a minute. But we wanted to talk about also like our ongoing collaborations. And this is a really important slide because I want to make it clear, how is it possible for us to build these really, involved tools and all of this programming that includes a series of courses, a redesign grant opportunity, multiple workshops, ways that you can get coaching with the tools. How did we do it? Well, for one thing, again, there's the Harper Academy, which instead of having just a couple people on reassigned time or partial reassigned time or frequently rotating out or a couple instructional designers, we've got a whole team. So we've got, 11 people, one person dedicated to communications, one person dedicated to instructional technology, one instructional designer for distance ed, one general instructional designer, an inclusive instructional design specialist, myself, the faculty letter member who kind of leads the programming. And then we've got a distance learning manager, and we've got a learning management system administrator. So we've got a multimedia and accessibility guy, and then we've got some faculty on reassigned times. We've got Lavanya Williams as inclusive teaching coach from student development, as well as Dubois McCarty. So I just want to point out that this is not something, that could be done without a large teaching and learning center. So that's one thing. And then another thing is the equity literacy project that we involve in the first course was built by a community of practice that started in 2016. And it launched after several years of working on organizing the themes and the basic terms that belong under each theme and gathering resources. And that's part of our community of practice program. So I mentioned we have the community of practice program annual share a cell tomorrow. That's one longstanding community of practice. Then I mentioned we got a couple grants, right? We had the Equity Teaching Academy planning grant with Roosevelt and City Colleges. We also had the social justice leadership cohort at Harper, where Anna was, at the same time we were working on Equity Teaching Academy, was working on a course that sounded like redesign. So we just combined efforts. And then I wanted to mention too, that we have this whole team, this design and facilitation team. So we've got our partner from ISU, from Northern, from our local high school district, who's a real leader of DEI, those faculty liaisons, the community of practice, the other grant I mentioned where we developed the robust assessment plan, the research practitioner practice project, and then the district partners. We have a council of our high school districts and ourselves called the Northwest Education Council for Student Success. So I'm going to give you my email now in case you'd like it, and then I'm going to show you where these resources are on the Academy webpage in case you'd like that. But while I'm pulling that up, let me just stop and check in here and see if we had any questions or comments. Yes, I can absolutely post the link in the chat. So, oh, thanks, Anita. Anita's pulled it up. I'm going to pull it up for you right now so I can show you how to drive around, and then hopefully we have some discussion. So I'm just going to go back to Zoom and start sharing, and I'll use that opportunity as a way to show you sort of what are some of our resources that we have that you're welcome to share, because we as educators obviously like to share with one another, and you're certainly welcome to take and use any and adapt any and all of this stuff, and we'd love to hear from you as well. So here's the Academy webpage. So real quickly, I'd like to show you, if you scroll down to the bottom, you get a real sense of our group. And the size of the group is important. We have our former dean is now the associate provost for curriculum instruction, so he's not as involved, but he's still over the academy. We have a faculty development assistant who supports all of this programming in terms of setting it up in our banner system and processing continuing education credits and graduate equivalency credits and all the other aspects of programming. Then we have an instructional design specialist, Melissa, our distance learning manager, Phil. Obviously, there's a lot going on with distance learning. We're really running a huge HighFlex pilot right now. We're hoping to have HighFlex integrated into our banner system by spring 24. We've got our instructional multimedia developer, a faculty communications and adjunct faculty outreach specialist. How are you going to get anyone into the programming if you don't have a newsletter and nice web presence and other communications? And then we have an instructional and distance education design specialist, Jenny. Then there's me, the faculty chair. And we have our learning management system administrator, and then an instructional technology coordinator. I would say everyone has their hands quite full. And we've just started to put our inclusive teaching resources under teaching support. So if you click on teaching support up at the top here, and then you can navigate to our inclusive teaching page, that's where you're going to find the resources from today's presentation. So in there, you'll have links to the syllabi from the 3 courses from the Equity Teaching Academy. And then you'll also have direct links to get the tools. So here's the Equity Teaching Academy. If you'd like to read our blog posts and things about to get more context, they're all there. The Applying AEMy or Applying Equity Matrix is here. So again, that's something that you can navigate using SoftChalk. So you can sort by those 6 themes that we talked about, like accessibility and transparency and humanizing, but you can also sort by, the level of complexity. So if you're looking for something simple versus all the way to something, really complex that might take you a lot of time, we can click on that one and it'll pull, take you down here, and then you can click directly on the Applying Equity Matrix and navigate that. Sometimes it runs a little slow on my computer when I'm presenting, so I'll let you do that. We also have the self-assessment document that for those 6 themes allows faculty to consider why this theme might be important. So transparency, for example, why is it important? And then what are you already doing, that embodies that theme in your teaching? And then what might you do? So it's a self-assessment and planning tool. We use it in the Equity Teaching Academy. We also run a workshop with it. And then if people who sign up for the workshop complete the workshop, they're eligible to do extended work with a coach where they can earn a stipend. So that's the incentive that I mentioned earlier. If you do the Applying Equity Matrix as part of the Equity Teaching Academy courses, you're preparing for a full redesign. And a full redesign is when you complete the redesign for equity course, one of the artifacts you would submit that following summer after you complete the course would be the AEMy self-assessment tool. And if you do a full redesign over the summer, that's a $1,500 stipend supported by our strategic goal plan. If you did the AEMy tool and 2 sessions of coaching anytime fall, spring, or summer with a coach, then you would get a $350 stipend. So you can see there's a lot of entry points, and the amount of time and energy you have to spend is incentivized by a stipend. And then the Enacting Equity Guidelines is here as well. You can see that there are many prompts, 21 prompts in one of our versions in 4 categories. So your facilitation, the introductory information that sets up, the tone of the course, your actual course content, and then assessment and evaluation. So again, that tool is built from studying a lot of tools and rubrics that are already out there and sort of making it our own. So that tool is used in our workshops. If you sign up for the Enacting Equity Guidelines workshop and you complete it, you earn some CEU credits, and then you're eligible to do work with a coach. And that's more like 4 to 5 sessions, because this tool, whereas AEMy has 6 categories, the Enacting Equity Guidelines tool, like I said, has over 21 categories. So that's going to take 4 to 5 coaching sessions. And then that one has a $750 stipend. And then with the Equity Teaching Academy, if you take any of the courses in the series, you earn 3 GECs or PDU credits for each course. So each course is 6 weeks long. And then when you finish the redesign for equity course, whether you've taken the previous courses or not, as long as you complete the redesign for equity course, you can do that redesign over the summer. And part of that redesign would be the AEMy as one artifact. The Enacting Equity Guidelines tool is another artifact. And then another self-assessment on what data or evidence you're using to inform your redesign. And then we also have on here our small group instructional feedback process, because we've added the belonging question. A lot of schools seem to be doing that. So it's not just what would help your learning and what hurts your learning, what could the instructor do and what could you do to improve your learning, but it's also what does or could increase your sense of belonging. We use that as part of the assessment. So in the implementation semester, we have 3 assessments, and this is one of them that we have, where we come into the classroom and go do a guided focus group with the students that starts with individual, then small group, then whole class, or we pair up faculty if they're able to do it for one another. So those are our tools, and I think I should probably stop sharing right now and open up for discussion, or else we'll be out of time, because like any faculty member, I can talk a lot. So I'd really like to hear from you.
Stephanie, thank you so much. I was hoping you would stop because there'll have to be questions. So let's open it up. And would you like raised hands, or what's your preference? Just jump in. Any questions to be voiced, or?
Thanks, Tracy, for putting the link in the chat.
Yeah, that page is very good.
It's good, but as is any teaching and learning center, we do wonder about our layout. It is a couple layers in. So when you go to the harper-academy.net, you have to go to teaching support and then click inclusive teaching. So we might make it a little bit more direct, but that's why I wanted to make sure I showed you kind of how to drive around there. We just added the inclusive teaching page this year. So, is there a list somewhere of the books mentioned today? Yeah, actually, if you go to the Equity Teaching Academy, the 3 syllabi are in there. So the syllabi tell the books, and I can also just kind of refresh. In the examine class, Dr. Hoff uses CAST by Elizabeth Wilkinson. And then in the second class, Reflect, Tony Bradburn, the director of DEI at our high school district, uses the Abolitionist Teaching Book by Dr. Bettina Love. And then in the third course, Ana Contreras teaches the Redesign for Equity, and she uses a book called Textured Teaching.
I was going to ask you for the syllabi, so thank you very much for posting.
Yeah, they're there on the web page. So if you can find them in a lot of ways. One of the downsides of our website too is every time we promote something, the blog post is up there. So sometimes you might get a blog post from a previous year. But if you go to the equity, inclusive teaching resource and go to Equity Teaching Academy, right there, you should get to the current syllabi. And if you don't see something and you need it, let me know. I can send it to you.
There aren't going to be any questions. I'm going to ask one.
Okay.
The self-assessment on AEMy.
Mhm.
When I first saw it, I thought, oh, this looks like a skills inventory. It's a practices inventory, but I think we can kind of make the leap. What I'm looking for is a way for faculty to take a look at what skills they've acquired for infusing equity in online learning and course redesign. Identify what they have and what they need to learn and set goals that are not 54 different practices, but as you point out, I mean, it's one of the things COVID taught us to prioritize. So can AEMy be used that way as a self-assessment of skills?
I think absolutely. If you look in the first column of AEMy, and I can pull it up if the internet will let me, move quickly enough here. If you look at the AEMy self-assessment document, and by all means, we very much welcome, critical friend feedback here, because even though we are having, a lot of interest and success and some promising data, this is new. I mean, this program will go through a lot of changes and improvements, I'm absolutely sure. So we're not by any means suggesting that all of this stuff is in tip-top shape. But if I'm able to pull this up for you, we first used it in the redesign course, and there's a link to the AEMy's, data, repository there. But what we actually are asking people to do, whether they take the workshop or take the course, is in that first column, we're asking them to reflect on their current practice. So, in each of these categories. So they could certainly say in each of these categories, why is this important, right? What do I currently believe about why this is important? And hopefully from doing the workshop or the course, they have a depth of understanding of what each theme is. And then you get into the reflection classroom. What am I already doing? And I think that's always really important, right?
Right.
Let's elevate that, let's honor that. And then how could I further incorporate or enhance this in my course? So I think
nice.
That does seem like a self-assessment.
Yep. That's super. I didn't get that deep. I didn't see that. I mean, that's a super reflection process, and then set a goal by fall of whatever I want to revise in this way. That's kind of was my thinking. Thanks.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Mhm.
You with your high flex model, what challenges have you faced and how did you work through those?
So this is fun that you asked this, because we just had a meeting this morning with academic standards subgroup that's working on the definition. And I think, we had a pilot with 33 faculty, and we had several semesters of gathering data from students. And we had faculty able to choose 2 or 3 of modalities. So obviously there's face-to-face as an option, live stream as an option, and online asynchronous as an option. So to be in the pilot, you had to at least be doing 2 of those, any 2 in your classroom. But we really highly recommended, based on the pillars of high flex by Brian Beatty and other people out there who are doing that work, that one of them be online asynchronous, because we're learning that really well-built course shell with the full asynchronous backbone, they're calling it, is really important to help students, not just students that would be engaging online asynchronously, but students who maybe miss out on a class and can't live stream either and need to learn, just need ample support resources. So our challenge was figuring out what would a definition be now that we're ready to put it in Banner. And some of our faculty really wanted to take away the online asynchronous because they felt like students should just take an online asynchronous course. So we really had to work on the understanding that that backbone needs to be there, because you just never know. Even if a student signs up for a day and time for in-person or live stream, things get in the way and then they need that as a backup. And for some of our students, like in limited seat program, like sonography, most of them are engaging online asynchronously and being quite successful. So we had to sort of make sure our faculty that were making those decisions understood that we needed to retain the flexibility so that faculty and departments could choose what HyFlex works for them and the definition could work.
So you're using 3 modes
You can-
simultaneously, like in-person, online synchronous, and online asynchronous?
Most of our faculty in the pilot did choose to do all 3. Some chose 2, but we made the definition that we're working on right now getting approved so that the faculty or department could decide at the course or department level for each of their courses what modalities they wanted to do, whether it was 2 of 3 or 3 of 3. And so we're trying to maintain that flexibility for the faculty so that they can best serve their students.
What about with your faculty? Did you face any challenges with
Well,
that?
just
And
like-
are you doing the same 3 modalities?
Just like anything, I think the faculty, it took some time to get comfortable with the technology. And it is a lot of time consuming work to create a really fully developed learning modality of any kind. So for those that chose all 3, which was most of our faculty, so a lot chose all, 2, but a lot chose all 3. It was just a lot of work and learning how to facilitate when you have people at home and people in the room. So it's really going quite well, but it's been a long pilot. We started it just after the pandemic when we were returning. So we've had, three semesters of data.
So our college, our faculty association has said they are not doing, do we have to get off? Is there another session starting?
Yeah, I'm gonna have
Yeah.
to close this out. And this is the only
But
part of this conference I don't like.
Yeah, it's
Just
great.
gonna
Thank
go
you
on
for having
forever.
some discussion. I think
This
all
is
of our concerns
wonderful.
are the same. Yeah, we're all going through the same stuff, so it's really great to talk. So thank you.
Thank you.
Stephanie, thank you so much. This is so exciting to see the wonderful things that are being done at Harper College. It's just, wow. I'm
My pleasure. Thanks for
over the
having me.
moon impressed. Thank you. And I may reach out to you for additional questions.
Absolutely. I invite anybody to. I really enjoy talking to people who are also facing the same challenges and having some of the same successes. So be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And everybody will receive a link to this.